Hey guys, welcome back to my channel, Rewind That. It's your girl, Miss K. If this is your first time coming across my channel, welcome. Please be sure to subscribe if you like the vibe. Hit that notification bell so you know when I upload more videos like this one. Um, I do want to, I was going to explain. I do want to apologize for the lighting. I was trying to figure it out. Once again, like the new location, and I still don't have everything that I need to make things look, you know, just basically have quality. So I apologize. So obviously going live at this time, it's 6:43, probably was a bad idea because it's still daylight outside and it's making the lighting very, very horrible. Okay. But we are here to talk about Lord of the Rings. Okay. And I had a very nice time watching this. I kind of smirked a little bit when I said very nice time because it wasn't that nice of a time. It was very it was interesting. It was a little nerve-wracking. Um it was a lot of things. I watched the movie, I'm sorry, the series. It's only 4 episodes. I watched it because when I was a kid in high school, we read the story. And I remember certain things happening in the story. And I'm like, I always remembered this story as a bunch of kids who were stranded and it was just straight anarchy after a while. They wind up deleting each other. It was just terrible, right? Of course, there wasn't, like a whole bunch of deletions, but it was enough, right? To the point where it was in my head, right? So much, I kept it in the back of my mind to the point where, as a parent, I've always hated children, especially boys, my sons, I'm a boy mom. I've always hated them to go out and knowing that it's going to be a bunch of boys and there's no supervision. And I was like, oh no, I don't like that, this and that. And it's because of this story, The Lord of the Flies, or Lord of the Flies. It's because of this story. And so seeing this, I was like, oh my gosh. The first person that pops up is Piggy. And I'm just like, I don't remember liking Piggy, but I kept saying to myself, but I think Piggy dies. But I don't remember me being or feeling affected by Piggy's death when I was in high school. I don't know if his character annoyed me in the book. I really don't remember. But at this time, remember, I'm young, right? I'm probably in ninth grade or 10th grade. I don't know. So I'm feeling like, oh my gosh, I don't know what's going to happen. But as I'm watching, right, the first episode and we're introduced to Piggy, and I'm like, he seems so, like, I really like this little character so far. He's so far so good. And I'm like, well, how is he in the book, and I'm just like, I know he dies. Like, I remember I'm just like, somebody hit Piggy in the head with a rock. I know that, right? But I kept battling back and forth, wondering, am I remembering this correctly, right? So the whole time I'm very nervous. And then as I'm watching it more and more, I'm like, oh my gosh, I hope it's not Piggy that dies. I hope it's Piggy. I think Piggy's the one that, he starts out good, but he freaks out and he freaking deletes Jack or something, like, right? Please let it go like that. And I should not be thinking this, right? Because these are kids. We don't want kids to be deleted. Okay, but it was just, it was that good, but it was also very, very annoying. Okay, so let's get into the story, guys. So we meet Piggy. Okay, the one that I was just talking about. We see this young little chunky kid with these glasses on. His real name is Nicholas, but his auntie Joan calls him Piggy. This we find out later. I'm sorry, she she calls him Nicky, right? But unfortunately, everybody else, when they're making fun of him, they call him Piggy. All right, so Piggy, he wakes up and he hears, as soon as he wakes up, there's this, I found it very interesting that one of the first sounds that he hears is a squealing freaking pig, right? And I'm like, ain't that something? Right? So and then as he's walking, he swats, like there's a fly that's flying around his face. He swats it and he kills it on his face. And then there's like this blood running down his cheek. And for me, someone who likes to tell stories, who likes to write, I'm looking at a lot of symbolism and I'm saying, is that signifying something? Is that foreshadowing something? Like, what does all of this really mean? I would love to know. And after this, I'm probably gonna go down a rabbit hole, because I want to know where the title comes from, right? And so when I think of flies and they're swarming, right? Normally they swarm around crap and dead things. And so for me, Piggy slapping and killing a fly on his face and then the blood running down almost made me think of, well, was that some type of, hint at his death, right? So that was just one thing, right? And so then as we move on, Piggy he's just walking through this forest on this island, and he's like, hello, hello. He can't find anybody. And then he meets Ralph, okay? And they're talking, and Ralph asks him, what do I call you? And Piggy said, you can call me whatever you want, right? And he said, just don't call me what everybody else called me. And Ralph is like, well, what did everybody else call you? And he said, you promised you won't laugh? And he said, yeah. So he said, they call me Piggy. And so Ralph starts laughing, and he said, Ralph, you said you weren't laugh. He said, I'm sorry, but that's a funny name. And, I'm saying all this for a reason. I mean, obviously it's a review, but as time went on, we found that Ralph, he's a good kid, but he did get caught up in some moments sometimes, as boys do and kids do. And he would let the moment kind of make him betray his friends, right? That's what I would say. But I'm going to talk about that a little later as well. Rashonda Greer was here. Hi. And J Mac was here. How is it going? If you guys have watched this show, let me know what you guys think about it. Did you read the book? Whatever was any type of insight that you can give. Awesome. What's up, Demarcus? He said happy Mother's Day. Thank you very much. All right. So now, Piggy finds a conch. He's very knowledgeable, this young man. Okay. He's already going into survival mode. Okay. We need to do this. We need to do that, this, right? And I'm going to go down the line in a minute, right? Thank you, J Mac. So he says, we need to, so first he finds the conch, and he's so knowledgeable because his aunt Joan had a lot of friends. It's almost to the point where after a while he keeps telling these stories about, well, oh, Auntie Joan's friend said this and Auntie Joan's friend said that and blah blah blah. And then Ralph says, your Aunt Joan had a lot of friends. And it's giving, how sometimes the mothers be having all these uncles, right? It's giving that. Like Auntie Joan was out, what I'm saying? She was doing her thing. Okay. And this Piggy was like, yeah, well, she didn't want to be lonely or something. She got lonely and all this stuff. So yeah, I think, and a lot of times it was male friends. So yeah, Auntie Joan was doing her thing outside. All right, she was outside. But anyway, so he learned a lot of things from Auntie Joan's friends. So he found the conch, and he knew that he had to blow into the conch to get everybody to come. So he has asthma. So he was telling Ralph, okay, you can blow the conch to see if there's, any, so all the other boys can come, whoever else is here. So Ralph blows the conch, and now we have all these little boys coming out, like a lot of little boys. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm talking about babies. So in this show, they call them the Litlins, and Ralph and Piggy and all the rest of the kids, their age, are called the Biggins. Okay, so the Litlins come, and we see a few more kids come. Then they're all gathered around, and they're talking. And Ralph is saying that this is what we need. I'm sorry, not Ralph. Piggy is saying, okay, we need to find out where we are, and all these things. And then while he's talking and trying to lay out his plan, we have the choir boys that come through. And for the life of me, they are saying that this island is very hot. So I can't understand why they are still walking around with their choir robes on and their hats, which is crazy. And they don't take the stuff off until Jack tells them to take it off. Okay. All right. So here's what Piggy wants to do. His idea for survival is He wants to find one spot to use the bathroom for, right? Because he's saying we need one water area for drinking, right? And we need one for using the bathroom, and it has to be the bathroom that everyone uses because we don't want, you know, that the dirty bathroom water getting to the clean water that we drink, right? Good ideas. Then he wants to build shelters. Then he's saying they need to choose a location for the signal fire, right? And so Jack comes on the scene. He's the first boy in line. He comes on the scene and he's like, um, I can sing, I can do this, I can do that, and I should be chief or whatever, right? And it's like, bro, you just got here, you know? And so they take a vote, right, of who's gonna be chief. And so everybody on the choir, they vote for Jack. Everybody on that was there already with Ralph and the Litlins and whatever, they vote for Ralph, okay? And so Jack is like, "Well, I just got here. That's not fair. You don't know me." Exactly, which is the reason why you shouldn't have came up talking about, you know, I'll be the chief. Like, just because you're ruling those boys don't mean you're going to rule everybody over here. It's not going to work like that. So I was glad that Piggy spoke up and was like, I don't think it should just be you saying that you're going to be the boss here. It needs to be more than one consideration for chief. Okay. So, we see here that the brains of the operation is mostly Piggy, and um Jack is the one, I'm sorry, not Jack. Ralph is the one that is like, he's the one that delegates the task, okay? So Jack, he does not respect Piggy, so he takes every opportunity to undermine him. Did I say respects? He doesn't respect Piggy. So he takes every opportunity to undermine him and to make jokes and clown him and stuff like that, calling him fatty and blah blah blah. And so when he first meets him and he says fatty, this is the thing I was talking about Ralph, where he gets into the moments. And he said, um, he said something like, no one's talking to you, fatty, or whatever he said. No one, and Ralph says, actually, his name is Piggy. And people start laughing. And Piggy's looking at him like, yo, what are you doing? Like, I told you not to tell people. You promised that you wouldn't. Like, what? So that's what I was saying when it came to Ralph. Good kid overall, but he did have his moments where he kind of slipped up a little bit and he would, like I said, he would just kind of fall into the crowd. And you had to kind of like snap him out of it, right? Somebody like Simon or someone like Piggy would have to snap him out of it but for the most part, he was pretty cool. All right. And so as Piggy is trying to talk about all of the things that they need to do to survive and get off the island, Jack is like, do we have time for this? And I'm just like, did this kid really say or ask that question? Do we have time for this? Because my thing is, yeah, you got time. I'm sorry, do you have a school bus or something to catch in the morning? Like, you guys are stranded on an island. The thing that you need to be figuring out is, yes, where you're gonna get water from, a drinking water, obviously, where you're gonna get food, shelter, and where you're gonna use the bathroom. All the things that have to do with survival. Like, it's like, what are you talking about? Okay, so I thought that was funny. Okay, so now meanwhile, guys, we have the Litlins who they have been freaking out. They're scared. They're crying a lot and everything. They're like a bunch of 5-year-olds, and they're crying because they believe that they've spotted a beast. Okay, so there's no mommy's not there to comfort them or nothing like that. And they're like, who's gonna tell mommy where I am and all this stuff like that. And so we have to have a mature young man here to handle these little boys, right? And I was so glad to see Piggy step up, and he took care of the Litlins, right? He made sure, okay, go to the bathroom before you go to bed, all this stuff. Right now we are in chapter 1, so we're talking about Piggy mostly, right? Go to the bathroom before you go to bed. He told them stories and things like that. Like, he kept them calm. So that's really good. And sometimes when I think about, all these boys being alone and they're not there with their mom, one of the first things I think about is, man, too bad they didn't have like a girl there to be like, the mommy figure, or that, have that maternal instinct. But Piggy, he really did a good job at being the mature one there. Okay. And then Simon was another one, and we'll talk about him a little later as well. I don't see myself being here that long because I was supposed to have someone with me, but they weren't able to come. So I was looking forward to having like dialogue, but since I'm by myself, I'm just gonna go through my notes and get up out of here, okay? So I can relax and watch some TV, guys. I saw some stuff, honey, and I'm about to watch me some TV. I was looking through Netflix and I was like, yeah, I think I'm gonna watch that, okay? All right, guys. So, like I was saying, the Litlins, they're scared, okay? Now, Piggy and Jack, they are running because they're like, we're going to hunt. So as they had their little meeting, and they chose Ralph to be the leader, right, the chief. So Jack is like, okay, well, then I'll be the leader of the hunters and stuff, right? So they're trying to go hunt, find them a pig to delete and stuff like that. So meanwhile, they're out and about. Piggy is also out and about in the woods, and as he's running and he's picking up, actually he's gathering wood for the fire that they're supposed to start. And as he's doing that, a little piglet runs across him. And so he throws down the wood that he was stacking up in his arms, and he's chasing after this pig. And I'm laughing because whenever Piggy runs, it looks like he's having a joyous time, right? But remember, he has asthma. So I'm looking at him like, bro, you're not supposed to be running like that. What is going on? But he does have his moments where you can see that he's just a kid and he's having fun too. And the funny thing is, as soon as he wakes up, what's up, Mike Conley? As soon as he wakes up, he he's like jumping over this puddle, and I'm like, bro, I don't think this is the time to play. So he jumps over the puddle and he jumps back over the puddle, and I'm just looking, and I'm just like, yeah, I don't know if that's gonna be my mindset in a situation like this. But I like those little, like, I feel like the director kind of had these little the moments like this that just kept reminding us, like, remember, these are kids, right? And you see that they're kids, but when they turn into little monsters, I'm glad that the director made those decisions, right? The creative decision to show how childlike these kids were before anarchy set in. Okay, so once again, like I said, Piggy, he's chasing the pig. Sounds weird. So the piglet, as he's running, it gets caught in like these twigs, like a, yeah, it's like twigs, looks like a bush, but it's like twigs. So he's caught, right? But also, when on the other end, Jack saw the pig as well, so he's running towards it. So now they're kind of like, they can trap the pig, but the pig, once again, he's already caught in the twigs, right? So Jack pulls out the pocket knife, and he's looking like he's gonna be ready to stab the pig, but he can't. And Piggy's like, go on, go on. He's saying it in like an encouraging way, right? Like, go ahead, you can do it, But he didn't, and the pig winds up getting away. So Jack automatically was like, look what you did, and he's like, what? What are you talking about? It's not my fault. He said, yeah, you were supposed to corner him, or and you didn't. Like, he's basically saying that he said, I needed you to close in so I could cut his throat and stuff like that, but you didn't, so it's your fault. And Piggy is like, wait, what are you talking about? I thought you were supposed to be the hunter and everything. And he started going off like, your father's probably not even a spy, right? You were trying to make it seem like that's what he was, and all this. Like, he was going off, and he was like, he said, you take that back, because Piggy was telling Jack that it is his fault what happened, right? Like, I'm just the one sitting, I'm here, you have the knife, and I'm just basically telling you to go ahead and do it. You just lost your nerve, that's all. That's how the conversation started. He was being kind to him and everything, but Jack didn't like to hear him say that he lost his nerve, and it was the truth. Jack couldn't do it. So meanwhile, as Jack is blaming Piggy, there was no communication whatsoever that this was supposed to be a teamwork effort, and they were supposed to, corner this little piglet and do those things. So he basically kind of threatened, he meaning Jack kind of threatened Piggy, and went up to him in a very intimidating kind of way. And he was telling him, he said, Ralph's gonna get tired of you and all this stuff, and what's gonna happen then, and things like that. And so Piggy was like, I won't tell anybody what happened here. You have my word, and I'm sorry about what I said about your dad. I shouldn't have said that. And he said, you shouldn't have said those things. Or no, he said, you won't tell anybody because it's your fault. Like, he was just being really antagonistic. And I was like, oh, I don't like this kid. I don't like this freaking kid, Jack, right? And so, but later on, we get to see a little more about Jack as well. Okay, but let's move on. Okay, so the kids, they build a fire eventually. So they build a fire, but they don't listen to Piggy once again when he tells them that there's too much wood, and they're using the fact that they were using rotted wood wasn't a good idea either. So after using Piggy's glasses and a little bit of kindling, they were able to get the fire going, but it got out of hand very quickly and it turned into a wildfire. So it spread across the whole forest, and now the kids have to freaking run for their lives, okay? I mean, and the way that this fire spread, you would have thought that someone would have seen it from somewhere, right? And would have sent help, but that did not take place. So now they have to figure out how they're going to block the fire. And Piggy talks about during the Great Fire of London, they had some type of, they did something where they stopped the fire from spreading, and so that's what we have to do. Eventually we saw that the fire was making its way towards the other side of the island, but would be stopped by the rocks, and Ralph pointed it out. So that's how we stopped the fire. Okay, so now, well, like I said, they're running to safety, and so now they're like, where's the Litlands at? Where's the Litlands? Because they had went to sleep, because like they're crying, they're whiny and things like that, so they had went to sleep. Now they got to go wake them up. What's his name is blowing the conch, Piggy, to try to get the Litlands to come out to wake up. The bigger kids are taking them, picking them up, and bringing them to safety and everything. And so everyone seems to be safe. But then Piggy is like, I feel like we have everybody, but there's someone that we're missing. And he didn't take inventory like he was told to, like Ralph told him to. And, he said, I can remember people by faces, but I, I think there's someone missing. So he realizes that the Litland with the birthmark is missing. And so he starts asking everybody, has anybody seen the Litland with the birthmark? At first, I didn't know this was a birthmark, guys. I thought that this was, from the plane crash, right? But apparently none of these kids were harmed in any way, shape, or form when this plane went down. Okay, so it's a birthmark. This little kid is missing. No one's seen him, and then after this episode we never see him again. Okay, and so upon rewatching, because I was only able to rewatch like 2.5 episodes, and upon rewatching, I've concluded that he died in the fire and they couldn't find him. And the reason why they couldn't even try to find him is because the forest was burnt up and they had to relocate. So this baby did not make it out, unfortunately. Okay, so now we're going to move on to chapter 2, which is Jack. So Jack is he is the one that I've been talking about, that he's supposed to be the leader of the choir, the boys choir, or whatever the heck that is. Okay. Clearly he's a rich kid. We start to see a little bit of his backstory, and in this episode we get to see how lonely and abandoned this kid is, right? And how he must feel, right? Because we're watching him watch other kids, okay, and they're getting hugs and kisses from their parents before they leave to get on the plane, while he's standing there alone with no one to see him off, right? And so let me see. Mike is asking me a question. Hold on. He says, hey, quick question, is it worth watching? I started last night, then stops. Okay, so for me, Mike, if I do a review on something, then it's worth watching for me. For me to want to come on here and talk about it, it's worth it. I'm not doing a review. Mostly I don't do a review on something that's trash, but that's not necessarily true when it comes to series, because sometimes you can't help, like, I don't want to put another show out there, but there's a show that I do because I promised everybody that I would see it through, and I don't really care for it that much anymore, right? But this is a new series, right? And it's an adaptation from a book. And that was what intrigued me. I knew what happened, right? There's a lot of psychological things going on in this show too, and I think you would enjoy something like that, Mike Conley, when you see the just the progression from how the kids are to how everything ends up. I do think that you would enjoy it. So it's only 4 episodes, so it's not like it's gonna take up too much of your life, right? But I think it's worth it if you ask. Okay, so once again we see this kid, that he's a lonely kid. He's rich, obviously. I don't want to say obviously, but he's one of those rich kids that their parents don't have time for them, and they have them off at boarding school while they go do whatever they do. Okay. And so now we have a flashback of him on the plane. Now he's sitting next to Maury, aka Maurice, who is a behind kisser of his for whatever reason, I don't know. But he's sitting next to him, and there's turbulence happening. And throughout this show, you hear Jack say a lot, well, my father said, my father said, my father said, my father said. So he clearly looks up to his father, but his father doesn't have time for him. So he hangs on every word that his father says, okay? And so he says, my father says that turbulence is not a big deal. All right, you have a good one, Mike. So my father says that, turbulence is not a big deal. It's just little air pockets or whatever, and blah, blah, blah. And the plane is shaking and shaking and shaking. And so Maury is freaking out. Next thing you know, the plane is going down. Maury is literally looking at Jack's face, right? Turned like this. And he's just like, like that. And I'm like, why are you looking at him screaming in his face? Like, y'all both, he in the same boat. He not gonna be able to help you. I know you probably think he's Superman, but he's not gonna be able to help you. Meanwhile, Jack is sitting there just like this, shaking. I mean, from the plane. The plane is shaking, and it's just going down. He's not making he doesn't look like it's affecting him whatsoever. Of course, he's probably afraid, but it looks like he's accepted that he's about to die. Okay, but he's not freaking out about it. And the only thing that I could think of is that this child is lonely. So what does it matter, right? What does it matter if I die? I'm lonely anyway, right? And so that was one of the things that came to my mind when I saw this. Okay. So now on the throughout the episode, everything seems to be going okay. Nothing crazy is happening at the moment, right? But Jack, we find that he would rather hunt and find ways to have fun. I want to go for a bathe. I want to go for a swim. I wanted this, I wanted that. And so Ralph and Simon, they're the only ones trying to build a shelter. And while they're trying to build the shelter, Ralph and his little hunters, they fail at catching a pig. So they're tired. They come back, and Ralph is like, are you here to help? And they're like, no, we're the hunters. And it's like, okay, well, clearly you ain't found nothing, so you could at least be over here doing something with us. But he's like, oh, I came to bathe, I didn't come to do that and stuff. So it was a lot of it was hard for Ralph to try to get order, especially with someone like Jack on board, who wanted things to be his own way and found a hard time listening to someone else tell him to do something, especially that sounded reasonable. Okay, so the boys, they start talking about this strange feeling that they get when they're in the woods. Now, this is especially coming from Simon. He says that he feels a presence when he's out there alone, and that he feels like there's something behind him, right? Like this is not a good island, okay? But like I said, guys, all Jack wants to do is catch a pig. Let me see if there's any other picture besides this right here. No, not yet. All Jack wants to do is catch a pig. He just wants to hunt for a pig. And it's actually a boar, not a pig, but they keep referring to him as a pig. So here goes the next scene, right? So there's this scene where Jack and Ralph are talking, and Jack is saying, I promise we're going to catch something. It's just that using the wood is not going to work, right? We need something else. And so Ralph says, can you sharpen a stone? Will that help? Jack says, no, that's not, he said, that's not going to help. Okay. So instead, in this scene right here, we see him um going for a few sharp pieces that he saw like these pieces of a plane, right? The plane that they were on. He sees them stuck in the trees on the side of this mountain. So instead of doing what Ralph suggests, which is to sharpen some stones to make little weapons and spears, right? He decides that he's going to go and climb up this mountain, right? Because he has something to prove to people, right? People are following me, so I got to look like big brave old Jack climbing up the freaking beanstalk. So he gets very high and he sees that this is a little too high. It's scary. He loses his footing. He almost slips down. But then we have his friend Roger comes up behind him to help him down, like guiding his foot, like, here, Jack, you could put your foot right here, then take your right foot, put it over here, and come down. And as he's helping him, Jack is like, I know. And I'm like, boy, you don't know. You know what I'm saying? Because you was about to die. And you should be happy that you have these little he calls them dogs. Anybody that's basically following behind them, which is really stupid. He calls them dogs. He didn't call them dogs to his face, but if you watched it, you'll see that that's what he does. Anybody that is fetching behind you and doing what you say, it's a dog. And that's what he was saying. And that's why the people that were so far up his behind and just going after everything he was saying, they should have been offended by him. But they weren't. Okay, for whatever reason, they just thought Jack was the greatest thing. Okay. So let me see, where am I now? So he's climbing down. When he gets back down, I was glad to see that he thanked Roger for his help. But he says to him, don't tell anyone. He says to him and Maury, don't tell anyone about this because they wouldn't understand. Okay. And so later on, this is so funny to me. We see the hunters, they're back at camp and they're sitting down and they're all sharpening stones, guys. Okay. This kid almost lost his life because he didn't want to take a suggestion from Ralph, which was just so simple. He wanted to do something else to prove his worth or whatever the heck he's been doing this whole series, and basically almost lose his life to show that he was big and bad. Just really stupid. Okay, so later on, guys, Simon finds Jack alone. This is Simon right here. He finds Jack alone, as he's like it's in, and basically this is at night. Okay, so he's alone at night, and he tells Jack that he must be having a jolly old time of things, right? Because just in his eyes, in Simon's eyes, Jack doesn't seem to be taking anything seriously. But the ironic thing is, or should I say, yeah, it's ironic because the answer that Jack gives him is, I'm not having a jolly time of it. I'm just taking it seriously. And it's like that's basically what that was the whole point of Simon's, comment. You're having a jolly old time because you're not taking it seriously. And so he's like, I'm not painting my face. I'm disguising myself because he feels like if he disguises himself to the environment, he'll be able to hunt better. Okay. So as the conversation goes along, throughout their conversation, Simon tells Jack that his father is not coming for him because that's all Jack does. My father this, my father that. So Simon says, your father's not coming. Okay. Oh, you don't know anything about my father. He said, yes, I do. I know my father, and I have a feeling that your father and my father are the same kind of people. And my father's not coming, so I know your father's not coming, right? And but the rest of the kids, they have good dads. Their fathers will come for them. And so you will get off this island. And, we just have to keep on doing what we got to do until they show up, right? So everything, okay, so let me see. Hold on. I'm trying to follow these notes. All right, so guys, in this conversation with Jack in this episode number 2, Simon tells Jack that he will get off the island. So I do want to point this out. He says he will get off the island, and then Jack says we all are. Okay? But now that we know what happens to Simon, it's like he had this feeling that he wasn't going to make it off of the island. And so he wasn't going to make it out alive. And so that is something that I picked up on as well, So during the meeting, guys, one of the Litlins, they get up and they say that they saw something big and horrid moving amongst the trees. Okay, and so I'm bringing this up because throughout this whole thing, there was this rumor that a beast was sighted and all this stuff, but we never saw a beast, okay? And so at some point, it's starting to make me think that this island had like a bad spirit or something on the island, right? I don't know if that's what the directors or the storyteller, the author, or whoever wanted to convey, but that's what I kept getting out of it, because a lot of things were going on that made it seem like there was some type of, excuse me, supernatural or demonic force behind all the anarchy and the kids starting to act crazy. Okay, so I do also want to say that I feel like this series was done tastefully, despite the brutal nature of this series. It was done pretty tastefully. When Simon was deleted, I was glad that they didn't show it. And so that's another thing that I felt like was done tastefully. And that's why when I was watching this, I was getting nervous, because I was like, I don't want to see one of these kids get brutalized. And so I'm glad that they didn't show it. But when he was being deleted, you knew that the kids were sticking him with the spears, but they didn't show it. So I was like, oh, thank God for that. Even though it was sad, thank God for that, right? We'll talk about that soon. But I was saying, and I feel like it was tastefully done. However, there was a scene where the hunters, that's the choir boys, Jack and his boys, they finally delete a boar. It was a mother boar. They found her breastfeeding her babies, and they came up on them, snuck up on her and everything. And so when they finally deleted her, they took her head off. And so they put her head on a stick. And I found that that was a little disturbing to me. I kind of feel like, once they had that head on a stick like that, and then they basically, stuck it into the ground so it could stay there, it was like they unleashed a spell, right? And then they also started chanting, and then later on we see them doing like these dances, and the dances felt demonic, and it felt like something was taking over their spirit and stuff like that. And they're chanting, kill the beast, cut its throat, spill its blood, right? And all that stuff. And it just seemed like something evil was being manifested, right? And, like Simon said, there's something about this island that's not good. Like, this island is not a good island, right? And so that was my thing when it came to that. Okay. Now, later on, they find some of the luggage from the plane, and two of the boys, they come across Simon's diary and they start reading it. But Jack is like, no, right? Don't read it. But he says it with like a sense of urgency. And so, because of that prior scene where in this scene right here, where Jack and Simon were talking, they were having like this little moment where they're like friends. Um, I thought that he was saying it to protect him, right? Like, no, don't read his diary, right? But as time went on, it's like I realized it wasn't because he was trying to protect Simon. It's because he was trying to protect himself and his own image. Because Simon had told in chapter 3, Simon's chapter, which we're going to get into in a few minutes. In that chapter, and I'm saying it now because I don't want to forget, Simon had a talk with Ralph, and he was saying, listen, we got to keep things going, because at this point, Jack separated himself, and he took his boys and separated himself and made a new camp. I'm gonna make a fun camp, right? We're gonna talk about that in a minute as well. But at this point, they have separated, and um Simon is telling Ralph, like, you have to basically keep your eye on the prize, right? Like, it's survival. We got to get out of here. We got to keep the signal fire going. We got to get the shelters. We got to keep doing what we've been doing. And Ralph is like, no, Jack and his camp, they're not even thinking about anything like that. And he's like, you gotta, but you're different, right? And you're not a coward. I know that I'm a coward, and I know that Jack is a coward, right? But he would really hate me, or he would hurt me or kill me or something, he said, if he knew that I told you that, right? So basically it's like, don't tell him that I told you that. But he's a coward, I'm a coward, and I know you're not a coward, so I need you to step up. Like, Jack is not a good leader, so can you please step up and don't like lose sight of what we need to do here, right? And so he said to him, Ralph, he said to Simon, he said, I don't understand the relationship between you and Jack. And he says, well, you know, me and him, we when the kids would go, when all the other kids went home for the holidays, me and him would stay behind for the holidays, right? Because clearly their parents wouldn't even come back and get them. So it was just him and Jack, and they were like the best of friends. They were close, this and that. Everything was nice and fun. And he said as soon as the other boys would come back, he would drop me like a stone. So that's the part where I'm saying, oh wow, Jack didn't want the other kids to read Simon's diary, because if you did, you would probably see how close they were, right? Sometimes I was wondering if they was like hinting at some type of, you know, gay relationship between the two of them, but I don't know. I'll talk about that later on as well, why I'm saying that. Okay. So like I said, I thought it was to protect him, but it wasn't. It's to protect himself, because everything about this kid, Jack, is about an image, okay? So next, guys, a ship comes around, but the signal fire wasn't kept going, okay? Jack told Ralph that him and his boys would hunt and keep the fire going. They shook on it and everything, okay? But that didn't happen, right? Why? Because Jack is so he's just too focused on getting this daggone boar, okay? And so Ralph called Jack a failure, okay? Which he definitely did not like. You're a failure. He said, no, take that back and everything, right? So we see that Jack's whole being is based on getting affirmations and pats on the back from others, right? And like I was telling you guys before, now he wants to make a camp with fun, right? One that hunts and sings and dances. That's what he says. And I'm like, what the heck is going on with this little boy? Like, he literally act like he wants to live here, right? And when they were talking about getting rescued, he was saying, yeah, I want to get rescued, but not until I catch a pig. He's like, I hope it doesn't happen for a week. Let it be a week before we get rescued, because I want to catch a pig. And I'm just like, what is it with this kid, right? Like, he just has to accomplish something. So, anyway, he goes off, and first, when the kid, he was very Ralph was very upset, because he's like, the ship left, and because of you guys not leaving the fire going, it's all your fault that we're still here. So he's getting at him, and he was calling him a failure. And I did feel bad. I didn't like the fact that Ralph called him a failure. Even though it is true, you did say that you and your boys were going to keep the fire going. Even when Ralph said, are you sure you guys can handle it? And he said yes, because why? He's being overzealous, and he's just thinking he's the man and he can do all this stuff. And clearly he couldn't, right? He couldn't split up his boys and say, hey, we're gonna go and do the hunting, and y'all go and make sure that the fire stays lit. No. Okay, so now we're gonna move on to chapter 3, and that is Simon. Okay, now Simon, like I was saying before, when it comes to him and Piggy, like, he is another very mature young kid. He stays quiet a lot. He doesn't really speak, and I feel like, unfortunately, because these are kids, um when someone is quiet like this, and when they finally do speak, it's good to listen. But the kids don't understand this, because they're children. They don't understand that there might be some wisdom coming out of this kid, right? We kind of see that he's a little bit more spiritual. In his little backstory, we see that even when they were singing in the choir, like, he was really feeling it, like, he's into it. He's got his eyes closed and he's singing, and I'm like, and it brings him joy. So that's why I'm saying, like, it seems like he had some kind of insight about something brewing and something bad about to happen while they were on this island. Okay, so in this chapter, Simon sees the dead pilot during his time alone in the forest. Okay, Fun fact, as I was watching like the making of this movie, I'm sorry, this series, the dead pilot in the tree, who they found, by the way, right, on top of the mountain, and they decided that they were going to push him off the mountain so he can drop into the sea. Piggy was saying, "No, I think we should bury him." And Jack says, "No, he made a mistake, so he should learn the lesson." And it's like, no, he has to suffer the consequences or something like that. He said, and I'm thinking to myself, little boy, you little dummy, he's dead. There's no consequences to suffer, right? And there was basically saying we should do a good Christian burial for him, and Jack is like, no, he made a mistake, like, you don't even know what happened and why this plane crashed, but automatically you're looking at the pilot like he's the reason the plane crashed. You have no clue what happened, right? But you guys are all alive and this man is dead, right? So they're like, let's push him over, right, into the sea, because Ralph's father is a Navy man. So he was saying, my dad, they carried them into the sea or whatever, no matter if it's a Christian or not. So they decide, hey, they're gonna try to push his body or take him off, but they couldn't move him because they weren't strong enough. So they pushed him over, right? And it was not good because he didn't make it into the sea. He wound up being in the tree. And this is where Simon sees him during his time alone in the forest. He sees the dead pilot just stuck in the tree. Okay. And so I was saying that the fun facts about the dead pilot is that he is the executive producer of the film. So he that's who played the pilot. All right. So in a conversation between that I did talk about a little bit between Ralph and Simon, he called himself a coward, and he was talking about how his mom and dad, they had a fight. He saw his mom had a bruise, so clearly the father hit his mom, and his father said to him, "Choose right now who you want to go with. You want to go with me or you want to go with her." And so he was telling Ralph that he couldn't choose, even though he loved his mother and he hated his father, but he was a coward and he could not choose. And then he heard his father say to his mother, "You see, not even your precious son wants you," or whatever. And he left. And he said that his mother ran behind the father begging and pleading something. And I said, "Oh, that's so sad, um so he calls himself a coward, guys, but it was so weird that he always went into the forest by himself at night, on top of that, despite the rumors of there being a beast. So it was like, you don't even realize that you're not really a coward. For whatever reason, you're not afraid to go out here where there could possibly be a beast. I don't know. But you're afraid to stand up to somebody like Jack, who you said he's a coward as well. And so I just found that very interesting, right? And I hated that he never really found his courage, in this story, So the weird relationship between Jack and Simon that I was talking about earlier, that it seemed like there might have been something else going on. I don't know. He was about to tell Ralph, and he said there was something else, right? He's talking to Ralph about the relationship that he has, or the friendship that he has with Jack. And Jack is like, I'm sorry, Simon is telling him, and he's like, this is how it was, and blah blah blah. And then he said, he's not really as bad, as he makes it. He's not really that bad of a person, and this and that. And then he's like, oh, and there's something else, right? Before he can say what that something else was, bunch of kids come screaming, saying that they spotted the beast. And I'm like, oh my freaking gosh, like, this is so annoying, because if you haven't watched it at this point, and you're coming back on the replay, I hope that you realize that there were a lot of unanswered questions, or there's a few little mysteries with this story. And there were things that Simon was trying to say, but he kept getting interrupted, or there was, someone else coming, like these kids, and he was not able to finish what he was saying. So we don't know what the heck. What else was it? Maybe all he was going to say was that he saw the beast, right? The pilot. I don't know, that's probably all he was going to say, guys. It probably had nothing to do with him and Jack, but he literally was talking about the something else um while he was speaking about Jack. So it would make sense, right? So anyway, so Simon knows that the beast is just the dead man in the tree, but he doesn't say anything once again, right, guys? He's not brave enough to speak up, especially to Jack. Once in This is what I said already, who he knows is a coward, which is something that's really odd to me. And maybe it's because he knows that, and to be honest with you, this is something that I realize as well. Someone like Jack is a dangerous person because he will do anything, even though he knows it's wrong or he doesn't even really want to do it. Like, let's say he doesn't want to delete someone or he doesn't want to hurt someone really bad. He would do it if it made him look a certain way to other people, right? If it got him validation and pats on the back. And I think that that's something that Simon understands about Jack. Like, yeah, he may be a coward, but he's willing to do things to make him not look like a coward, which makes him a dangerous person, right? All right, so let's move on. Oh, here's another thing. Jack, I'm sorry, during this time, this chapter with Simon, we hear a lot of the people referring to him as Batty, right? So he's crazy, this and that, but he's really someone that's in tune with his spirit. He's more spiritual than anybody else. He likes to come out into the woods by himself at night because he said it's peaceful, right? Anything, I guess, that he can do to kind of get in tune with his spirit or whatever. And so he starts doing really weird things when he sees, I think this is the scene right before he dies, where he sees the not the beast, the dead guy, and it's like he's trying to channel he was doing some weird stuff, y'all. It was like he was trying to channel the dead spirit onto him. I didn't know what he was doing. I was very confused by that scene, but I just thought that it was like crazy. And I'm mad because I had like the whole picture of it and everything, and now it's not there. So oh, here it is. So right here in the scene, I think this might be the scene before he dies, and he's reaching out to the dead pilot, and he starts doing all this crazy stuff, like his body is moving, he almost like a contortionist, even though he's not bending himself. But I'm just like, what is happening with Simon? I was very confused by this, but I started to see that there was something weird about him, and I understood why people was calling him Batty, right? But he wasn't crazy. He was just more spiritual than anybody else. And even when I watched the like behind the scenes type of episode, not behind the scenes, this a separate episode where they're just making of the show, they were talking about that too. Like he's just more in tune with his spirit. That's really what it is. Um so anyway, guys, let me see. I think let's talk about Simon's death. So during this time when they have this meeting, they're like, oh, we're going to go kill the beast. We'll get him and this and that and the third. So now they're out and they're over there by Ralph's camp. Not Ralph's camp, Jack's camp. They're doing all this, these crazy dances, looking like they're gonna do something. Hold on, guys. My son is calling me. Yes. Hi. Okay, guys, sorry about that. The kids are calling, and so I gotta be able to answer and get to that, and I still have to do something that I'm totally not ready yet. I have to send some. Hold on one second. Sorry. So what was I talking about? I wish that there was more people so I could say what I was talking about. Dag it. Oh, so the kids, right? They're dancing and they're like preparing themselves to go fight the beast and get the beast and delete him and take him out. And they're dancing and chanting, "Kill the beast, kill his blood, blah blah blah," do all this and that, right? And so before they go, right? Let me. Okay, so before they go to the island with the other kids, right? Because the thing is, they had invited Jack. I'm sorry, Jack and his crew invited the other kids, Ralph and Piggy and all of them. He said, "Come, we caught a boar. Why don't you come eat with us and everything?" And Simon was saying it's a trick. Like, I don't think you should go and all that. Something's gonna happen. Like, I'm telling you, something bad is gonna happen. We shouldn't go, right? And so Ralph is not listening. He's like, "We're just gonna go," right? So they go and they see all this stuff, and then once again, like I said, they eat the boar, and then after that, they start dancing and chanting and do all kinds of crazy stuff. And so while they were doing that, Simon, he feels very uncomfortable. So he's like, "You know what? I'm getting out of here." He doesn't say anything, but he just backs away. That's what he does all the time. Simon does not talk a lot. He backs away and he's like, "Okay, I'm out of here. They're bugging out. Let me just go." My thing is, Simon, why didn't you leave for real and go back to the other camp instead of staying in the woods, right? And so while he's out there in the woods, he's doing all this channeling or whatever the heck he was doing. And so meanwhile he's doing that, the boys on the island are chanting and doing all these little demonic witch doctor dances and looking crazy and stuff like that. And so then while Simon must have been coming back to the camp on his way back, and one of the boys was like, "There," right? He spotted it saying, "There's the beast." So they go and they run after the beast. Meanwhile, the beast is Simon. He's the person moving, or the thing moving around in the trees, right? So they get him and they're stabbing him with the spears. Okay. And there is all of these little boys doing this to Simon. So you can tell that Jack, he lifts up his little veil thing that he had over his eyes, and you can tell that he sees that it's Simon. And he stops and he walks away. The other kids are still going, still just jabbing him, right? And then they finally stop. And my thing is, the kids that were in the front row, you didn't realize that that was Simon. You didn't realize that that was another kid and not a beast. That right there was something that irked me. And at the end of the day, we were never able to see how they even felt, or how they, what were their responses when they saw that it was Simon. Like, did they even care? I don't think they cared, honestly. It's like they just turned into these freaking menaces after a while. They really didn't care anymore, especially Roger. Like, Roger turned into a whole freaking menace, okay? Like a whole, like, devil, okay? Eventually they captured the twins, and they were like, when Ralph tried to come back, and I'm kind of jumping ahead, when Ralph tried to come back, they were like, "You got to get out of here because Ralph is I'm sorry, Roger, he's crazy. That Roger is crazy." Okay. So anyway, I kind of lost my train of thought a little bit, but I think I'm going to so basically what happened was, this is how we found out that Simon was dead. His body was floating in the sea. And so I think that the way his body got to the sea was that maybe Piggy and not Piggy and Ralph, they pulled him out and they put him in the water so he could float away, right? Because that is what one of the conversations that they were having when they were trying to figure out what they were going to do with the pilot's body. Like, this is what we do. If we can't bury somebody, we'll put them in the sea, right? And so I think that might have been Ralph's idea. We didn't see that happen on camera. All we know is that we saw Ralph, I'm sorry, tag these names, Simon in the water. That's all we know. And so for me, I'm looking at it like, yeah, because they stabbed him up while he was in the woods. Ain't no way that he got out there. You know what I'm saying? Somebody had to put him in the water. Okay. And so yeah, that was tough to see. I didn't like that. And I was very afraid for his life. I don't remember him dying in the story when I read the story. I really just remember Piggy. But I just thought it was sad, and I was afraid for him, especially when he started asking questions when they were talking. Him, Piggy, and Ralph, they were talking, and he was like, you know, how do you feel? What do you wish? You know, you want to go back home? Like, what do you want to do when you get back home, or this and that? And then, you know, they're having this conversation, and Piggy is saying, "Oh, I'm gonna do this, I'm gonna do that," and Ralph is saying what he's gonna do and what they're gonna eat and all this stuff, um and or just talking about things that make them happy, and um Simon was saying, you know, this is the happiest that I've been right here on this island. This is the happiest that I've been. And when he said that, I said, "Are you sure, baby? Because like, this is, I mean, you're amongst. Yes, you may have found some new friends, and maybe that's why he's saying this is the happiest that he's been. But you also you're still also dealing with the mistreatment from Jack. And so it's like, how is this the happiest you've been? But I guess I can kind of get it, you know what I mean? Because if he's dealing with something from Jack, which is what he's used to, then having those moments of, you know, laughter where you see he has a smile on his face, or the time when he sees Ralph stand up to Jack and all those things, and just having the moments of fun with his friends like Piggy and Ralph, that is something new for him, and probably some real genuine friendships, right? The only thing that I didn't like and I was pretty upset about was when Ralph was trying to say something to Jack, and Jack once again don't want to listen to nothing, and Ralph was trying to go after Jack to still try to convince him, and Simon pulls him back like, just let it go, you know, Ralph, let it go. And he's like, get off, like, you know, basically, get off me, you're so batty, Simon. And it's like, why are you calling him batty? I don't understand that. Like, what did he do for you to talk to him like that? You know, that those were the things that kind of irked me with Ralph. But and I felt like, dang, I just didn't want to see Simon go out that way. You know what I mean? But like I said, he knew that he wasn't getting off that island, and it just felt like he was at peace with the fact that, like, yeah, this is the happiest that I've been, you know, and I'm not getting off this island. He didn't say it, but just the way he was talking, you can tell that he knew he was not making it out. Okay, let's talk about, before we wrap up, let's talk quickly about Ralph. So chapter 4 talks about Ralph. I talked about him a little bit. I feel like he has a lot of great qualities, but a few faults. One of the faults was that he ran his mouth a little too much sometimes, and like I said, he let himself get caught up in the moment. One moment was when, you know, when he told the rest of the crew that they called Nikki Piggy. Okay, you know, Piggy didn't like that. Okay, and then also when he he didn't tell, he had to tell Ralph, not Ralph Daggett, I'm sorry guys, he had to tell, he was having an argument with Jack, and Jack was saying, you're scared and you're this and you're that, right? And it's so weird because he was definitely projecting. He was the one that was okay to cross over that little bridge or whatever that was. And so, is it a chasm? I don't know. But anyway, he was afraid. He was the one that was brave enough to cross that thing over, right? To cross over it. And then Ralph, I'm sorry, Jack decided to cross over with him because he, you know, his boys are watching, and if he stayed back, he gonna look like he's not brave. That's what's going on in his mind. So when they get over there, they start arguing and having disagreements. Um, and Jack was telling Ralph that, you know, you're just scared and all this stuff like that. And so Ralph says to him, and you're not as big and bad. Basically, I'm paraphrasing. You're not as big as bad as you like to let on. And instead of just taking it at face value, Jack wanted to know who told him that. Isn't that funny? He wanted to know who told him that. Now, yes, he knows that him and Simon have been um together, like, being closer, being friends and everything. And he also felt some type of way about Simon choosing to stay in Ralph's camp opposed to being with him. I wouldn't have chose his camp either. If you making fun of me and stuff like that, and you're saying ain't nothing good ever come out when Simon talks, and Simon also, he's always fainting and this and that. Like, if I'm going to be at the butt of all of your jokes, you know what I'm saying? And you're gonna be laughing at my expense and all that. Why the heck would I want to choose to go with you? But you're not even really my friend. I'm going to stay with somebody that's responsible and things like that. And so he felt some type of way about about Simon having an allegiance to Ralph. Okay. And so I'm saying all that to say that he meaning Ralph, clearly told either he told Jack that Simon told him. I know that sounds crazy. Sounds like gossip. Either he told Jack that Simon told him that he was a coward, or Jack figured it out himself, because we had another scene where Jack is over there looking at Simon with these little evil eyes, you know what I'm saying? And he's also like letting him know that he has his diary and stuff, right? And Simon was saying, "Give me back my diary." And he's like, he's like, no. So Simon, doing what he does, sneaking out through the night, goes to Jack's camp and he takes his diary back and then he burns it. Okay. Anyway, guys, I know that Ralph wanted to be a good chief. Okay. But there were times when he needed to listen to people like Simon and Piggy, because when he didn't, it cost them their lives. This last moment, guys, when after Piggy and after Piggy, so this has it's not the right picture because it has Simon in it, but after Simon dies, we have Piggy and this young man on and Ralph on their little island, and Piggy is trying to explain to Ralph that what happened to Simon was, it was M, right? And Ralph is saying, okay, we're going to go and we're going to talk to them one last time or whatever. And Piggy was like, this is not a good idea. It's just that's not a good idea. And so I think they had his glasses too. So I'm trying to figure out, because I don't really remember this part of the reason why they went there first. I almost want to ask chat to be like, hey, what happened with this scene? Why did he go over there? You know what I'm saying? I think it was because they wanted to get his glasses back, because they did need to make like a signifier or something like that. But if you watch it, right? So his plan is to go back there and talk to them nicely and this and that and ask for the glasses and all this stuff. And Piggy is like, this is just not a good idea. I don't think that we should do this. But they went nonetheless. And the conch is there and no one's listening to Ralph speak. So Piggy tries to take the conch and he's like talking and he's like, I have the conch, and everything is just, once again, anarchy. No one's listening. So he says, I have the conch, right? So someone from very high, I think it might have been Roger, I don't remember who, but someone drops a rock on Piggy's head and he falls out. Boom. He's bleeding pretty badly. The kids are laughing. They're like, yeah, now he shut up and blah, blah, blah. And so Ralph picks Piggy up and they're kind of running. Okay. They capture the twins and they bound the twins up. So they got the twins there. And now Ralph and Piggy get away and they're running. And Piggy's really like, he's out of it. His head is leaking. And so, after everything, Piggy eventually he dies. Ralph apologizes to Piggy and he says, you know, I'm sorry for letting them know that your name was Piggy, and Piggy said it's okay. You didn't know that you were gonna like me this much, you know. And I'm glad that, see, when it came to the Piggy's death, it was a little more, there was closure involved, right? They were able to have their last moments, and even Piggy's last final little idea that Ralph, he can build a boat and make like a sun something, he said. So I forgot what it's called, but something that lets them know like the direction, right? And you stay north and all this stuff like that. And so, you know, they were still talking and everything. Even when he left him to go get the water, when Ralph left Piggy to go get the water, Piggy was like, I don't think it's a good idea. And I said, oh my gosh, he's gonna freaking die while he's away. But he didn't. He was able to bring back the water and everything. And so, but that was it. Next thing you know, we see Piggy says, I woke up and there was an elephant in my pajamas or something like that. I don't know how the elephant got there, whatever he said, but those was his last words. And I'm thinking to myself, what do you mean an elephant? Like, did he crap himself like because he's dying? Like, you know, I'm over here, my mind is spinning. I'm trying to figure out everything, right? But he died, and he buries Piggy, right? He digs Ralph, he digs, you know, little ditch, and he buries him. And so he goes back to the camp where the wild boys are. And I'm like, I don't know why he went back there. Like, for what? So the twins are over there, and he's like whispering to the twins. He's like, hey, and he's like, it's me, Ralph. And the twins are like, go away, Roger. He's crazy. He's really a menace. You need to get away from here. And he's like, I came to tell you that Piggy died. And so while he's there, the boys are coming up in there, and they find out that Ralph is there, so they chase him, and the hunters, they start to hunt Ralph, okay? And as they're trying to hunt him, they try to smoke him out. I'm skipping over the confrontation that he had with no, you know what? I was gonna skip over it because I'm trying to end this, but no, I'm not gonna skip over it. He runs into, as he's running, he runs into Jack. They have a confrontation, and he hits Jack in the head with something, and he says to Jack, what do you want from me? You want to call me chief? I mean, you want me to call you chief? Because I will. All my friends are dead, and I don't want to be the chief of anything like this. So there's a facial expression that comes over Jack that kind of looks a little sad. And he, once again, throughout this whole series, we see that this boy could never take accountability at all. So the first thing he does is, this is all your fault. Everything was going well. You ruined everything. You ruined everything, Ralph. And it's like, how? You know what I mean? That all he does is project. That's all this kid ever did, was project everything. You know, knowing daggone well, if he would have just listened to certain things, if they said that Ralph was the chief and Ralph would say certain things, all you had to do was get your guys in line and do what Ralph said to do. And none of this would be going on. You know what I mean? But he always wanted to, oh, it's about fun. It's about going to catch a pig, and it's about this and about bathing and swimming and all this stuff, you know? And so he wants to blame Ralph for whatever took place, right? And he punches him, Ralph punches him, and he runs, right? He punches Jack, and he runs, right? So they're still after this guy. And Roger says, you know what, if you really want to, when you want to get your prey, sometimes you have to smoke them out. So let's start a fire. You light a fire there, you light a fire there, right? And so they're lighting this fire, and Ralph is hiding, and so he does come out of hiding, but he runs to the beach. And so Roger's whole plan was that Ralph has nowhere to run but to the beach. And then when he runs to the beach, that's where we're going to get him at. So he finally gets to the beach, Ralph, right? And he's like, Jack, I'm here. Where are you? Blah, 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 whatever. So while he's out in the woods before he gets to the beach, he sees, like, I think they showed the little kid with with, oh my gosh, I wish I could tell you for sure, but I could have sworn they showed the kid with the birthmark. If you are watching this on the replay, let me know if you saw the kid with the birthmark, because he definitely saw Simon and he saw Piggy. right? And so I'm like, oh, so those are dead people, right? And then after that, while he's calling Jack, where are you? Where are you? I'm here, this and that, right? You start seeing all these boys' faces again because they had this close up in the beginning of the series. They had this close up of all the boys' faces. And I said, did they die? Did this whole little fire smoke them all out? Like, did this plan mess them up and they died in the fire? So I'm over here thinking the boys are dead. Everybody's dead, right? But that's not the case. I don't know why the heck they did that. So Ralph comes out. He looks to his left and he sees a captain, right? A Navy captain. Excuse me. And he kind of starts crying. And the Navy captain's like, what's going on? Are you, you here alone or whatever? Is there any adults? Blah, blah, blah. So now all the kids are like, ah, they're running out. They're acting crazy, like, a bunch of freaking Looney Tunes. And when they see the adult, they all kind of like transform. It's like they snapped out of it and they transformed back into kids. And they're all like, they all have their spears and they were chasing after Ralph. But now that there's an adult in front of them, they're just like, like it's over. This is just over right now, right? So the last person to run out like a freaking maniac is Jack. And he is like looking and he sees that there's an adult there, a Navy guy. And the Navy guy says, who's the leader here? And he's looking right at Jack, and Jack doesn't say anything. Nothing at all. Why would Jack say something when he don't want to take accountability for nothing? You see all the anarchy happening, you think he's about to say, I'm the leader of all this? Absolutely not. Absolutely not. So what does Ralph do? He says, I am. And he takes it because the guy reprimands him like, are you British? You're British boys, right? So if you're British boys, why are you acting like this? This was a poor show, right? This is a poor show. If you were, you should have known what you were supposed to do and have, get some order and things of that nature, right? Like you're kind of misrepresenting our country. That's kind of what he was saying to them. Like, you should know better, right? And he's like, yes, sir. Yes, sir. He's crying. And he said, all right, let's go. Let's get on the boat. First he was saying, is there anybody missing? Anybody dead? And he's like, yeah, about two. And the man said, two dead? Like, basically like deleted? Like, what? And then he said, maybe more. I don't know. But I just know there were two and their bodies are not here and all that stuff. And so the kids start getting on the boat and everything. Like, he's like, all right, let's go. Let's get on the boat. And I just found it so strange that Jack he didn't move. Like, he really didn't look like he wanted it to be over. Because it was almost like, hey, I'm going back to my regular life now. The life where I'm abandoned and I'm over here and I'm always, it's always this and it's always that. And I think that it just kind of goes to show as well that you have to be careful how you treat people. You know what I'm saying? Because the one person that when everybody leaves, Simon is there to still be your friend when everybody goes home to be with their parents who care about them. You and Simon are the only one that stay behind because y'all parents don't care about you. Okay? And he's dead now, pretty much because of you and your anarchy. And it's just like, you should have thought about that. But you know what? He didn't think about that, right? Jack didn't think about that because in the moment, he really just wanted to live in those moments where it's like, this is my time to shine. This is me feeling like I'm the man. And as long as I'm going to feel the way I need to feel, I really don't care about anything else. I don't care if we get off this island or not. Like, I'm cool with living like this forever. I'm the leader here, people looking up to me and this and that. And I'm just like, wow, like, it's sad. So he really didn't look like he wanted it to end. He looked like he wasn't happy that they got rescued, you know. And Roger, that little guy, he really became like a little devil. And it was so weird how manipulative he was acting because he was like, you know, he seemed like he became more of the leader, but he kept trying to manipulate or make Jack feel like he was still the one in charge. Like, he said, we're gonna smoke him out, we're gonna do this and do that to Ralph because Jack doesn't want him to get off this island alive, right? And then at another point when they killed the boar, Roger said, everybody's going to be so proud of you, you know? And so I just found that very interesting how, sometimes when people have certain people behind them, that even when they feel like they're in control, a lot of times they're not even in control. It's somebody else that's pulling their strings. And that person doesn't mind looking like they're not in control, because they're the ones that's really getting things done. But they're okay with you looking like you're the boss, because they know that they really the ones that's like that. And they're strong enough and secure enough in their own minds, right, to allow you to think that you're the boss. And that's dangerous too. So Raja, he was another one that was like, yo, this kid is freaking dangerous. Okay, like very dangerous. And Ralph, I'm sorry, not Ralph, Jack, very dangerous because of the simple fact that he will do anything to appear um like he is not. Oh my gosh, I hate when I can't say certain things. He would do anything to appear like what he is not, right? So if it's bravery, he'll do anything to appear brave. If it looks good to be cruel, he'll be cruel, right? If it's cool to delete somebody, that's what he'll do. Even if he walks away feeling bad, like, I know I just really did a bad thing, but I looked cool, so I'm gonna just deal with it. Anyway, guys, that was my take. When you do finally watch this, let me know what you guys thought of it. Make sure you like, comment, and subscribe if you haven't already. Hit that notification bell so you know when I upload more videos like this one. Forgive me for some of the interruptions and the names. Like, after a while, the names started to get on my nerves, and I was trying to say, call this name, call that name, and I'm mixing them up. But I did enjoy this show. I really did. And I just think that is something that it's amazing to see how things get out of hand when there are no adults involved, when there's no order, right? And because at the end of the day, these are children, right? And my son was saying something to me funny the other day when I was trying to explain the story to him. He was saying that my older son used to say to them when they were kids, I wish there was a world with no adults. And I said, wow, that would be a very terrible world. Just like I believe that the world would be terrible without children, because I think children bring some type of joy, right? Like, there's just this balance, right? You cannot have a world without parents, okay? Like, you need guidance. You need people there that's going to steer you on the right path and teach you and stuff like that. And the minds of children are just so easily impressionable or influenced. You cannot just leave them alone with each other, okay? Because even the most mature kid and stuff like that can eventually succumb to anarchy at the end of the day. And the Litlins, they started wilding out too, y'all. Them poor babies was crying all the time, always scared, this, that, and the third, and then out of nowhere they became little beasts themselves. And that's another thing that I wanted to say. When Simon was out in the woods, right? In the forest, the head of the beast was talking to, not the beast, the head of the boar was talking to him, right? You not visibly talking, but you can hear a voice, and he was hearing things. He said, you're a fool to think that you can delete the beast. The beast is not something that you can delete. And this time I was thinking to myself, I said, you know why? It's because the beast is them, right? They are the beast. And even when they were singing the songs and they were chanting and they're like, kill the pig. What did they say? Kill the pig, kill the beast, cut its throat, spill its blood, right? When they were saying all that, in my mind, all I was thinking about was them, right? You guys are chanting and you're saying all this stuff, And at the end of the day, the only people that are gonna die is y'all. Y'all are going to die, right? The Lord of the Flies, the Lord of nothing, because at the end of this all, you guys are going to be dead. If no one would have come to rescue them, these kids would have deleted each other one by one the way they were going. Okay? And the last one standing would have been the Lord of the freaking Flies. That's what I gather from it. Okay? And then I like the confirmation that I got about the whole beast being them. Like, these kids are literally turning into beasts, right? When I watch the behind the scenes thing and the making of it, which I just love watching the making of stuff, because I love like seeing how directors do their thing. One of the producers, or whoever he was basically saying that there is this idea that there's a beast within them, right? And that we all have some type of beast within us. And I was like, I'm so glad that he said that, because I was thinking that. And so I was kind of excited because, I tend to geek out with stuff like this. And so when I hear a creator basically saying certain things that I'm thinking about and how I'm analyzing everything, and for me to be to understand that that's the direction that they were going, I was very excited about that. So that's just something for me, because I am somebody that eventually that's the type of stuff that I want to do. So when I see things like that, and um I can kind of conclude that that's the story that they're trying to tell, I get excited. It's just how it is. Anyway, guys, I've been here for almost an hour and a half. Did not think that I was going to be here by myself this freaking long. Okay. But it's okay. Okay. Make sure you like, comment, and subscribe if you haven't. Hit that notification bell so you don't want to upload more videos like this one. Until next time, take care and be blessed. And I will see you in the next video. Bye bye.